Hey everyone, welcome to Richard's Retro. This is the Bible in 2022. No announcements today other than show up at my house. We're gonna have ice cream, so you want to be there for that. If you're in town, come show up. That'll be 7:30 at my house. If you're not, you can show up. We're using Google Meet now instead of Skype, so the link will be in the description. So come chat about this week's reading. All right, let's see if we can make this one quick. We finished up Leviticus this week. We saw a blasphemer put to death, right? So a lot of the original laws had capital punishment as the result, and we see that starting to take place. And then we see God actually repeat himself, just for their benefit. Like, these are my laws. We read about the Sabbath year. I love in Exodus 25:23, it says, "The land must not be sold permanently, because the land is mine, and you reside in my land as foreigners and strangers. Throughout the land that you hold as a possession, you must provide for the redemption of the land." It's just a reminder from God that everything is His. Even the Israelites are just borrowing it. We see God's promise. Saying, "I will put my dwelling place among you, and I will not abhor you." It's kind of a weird way of saying, "I'll love you. I will not abhor you." Let's see. In Leviticus 27:29, we read, "No person devoted to destruction may be ransomed. They are to be put to death." And I didn't know if that meant devoted to destruction as in they were set apart for destruction, like they've been given the death penalty and so they can't be ransomed, or if devoted to destruction means they themselves are devoted and constantly destroying things, so they can't be saved. But either way, I mean, it's just kind of pointing out the harsh penalty of sin at the end of Leviticus here. And then we make it into Numbers with lots of counting. We see the first census of Israel, and there's a large number of people. I noted that Judah, the tribe of Judah, was yet again the largest. So their tribe was fulfilling the commandment of Genesis quite well. We see how the tribes are organized, the role of the Levites. I also noticed they call back to Nadab and Abihu, and it says they had no sons, which made me think, I wonder if they were very young when they brought unauthorized fire before God and died. I assume so, but I don't know. I mean, the ages of people is sometimes off here, and if their dad was 80, I would hope they were slightly older. But it just, it's interesting to see that they not only died, they had no family. We see God claim the Levites and say, "The Levites are mine, for all the firstborn are mine." And then we see them count the firstborn, and the number of Levites and the number of firstborn are very close. There's a small difference that they make up for with an offering, but and they count from every male a month old or more. We pointed that out last week. The census was for everyone 20 or older, but for the Levites, it was everyone a month or older. Already counted, like they were already in that priestly line. We see the responsibilities for taking care of the temple. We see the test for an unfaithful woman. I thought this was interesting. When she is made to drink the water that brings a curse and causes bitter suffering, it will enter her abdomen and will swell, and her womb will miscarry, and she will become a curse. I love that God provided justice back then, when there was no way of telling. But it just seemed weird that there was so much onus on the woman. It even says in Numbers 5:31, "The husband will be innocent of any wrongdoing, but the woman will bear the consequences of her sin," which doesn't seem fair. So I wonder if maybe I'm reading that wrong, or if that was really just so ingrained in the culture. I love the Nazirite vow, especially the first two. They must abstain from wine and not be around dead people. Two things that Samson both didn't do. I mean, the only thing Samson did right was his hair. everything else. He kind of failed on the Nazirite vow. We see the priestly blessing. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. And the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. I loved that. And I think that's the end of Numbers. Yep, that's the end of what we read in Numbers this week. So, let us go to Psalms. And I'm going to do these in chronological order rather than the order we read them in. So, Psalm 64, we see, all people will fear. They will proclaim the works of God and ponder what he has done. I love this like call to the future where David is worried about people setting evil plans against him, and he's just like, you know what, everybody is not just going to, praise the name of God. They're going to proclaim all of the works that he's done and ponder it, like actually consider who God is. And then the righteous are going to rejoice in that. We read Psalm 81. I don't know when this was written. It's not a Psalm of David, it's of Asaph. But he basically retells the Exodus story. But then in verse 11 it says, but my people would not listen to me. Israel would not submit to me. So I gave them over to their stubborn hearts to follow their own devices. So I'm curious if this one was written after the exile or not. If that's what he's talking about, or if he's talking about something else. So I'm curious, based on other clues, if you guys have thoughts on that. And then the last one we read this week was Psalm 112. And the verse that stood out was verse 5. It said, good will come to those who are generous and lend freely, who conduct their affairs with justice. I like that. It's a good reminder for us to be generous and lend freely. And then we're back in Hebrews, making some good progress. We see comparison to the earthly tabernacle. He called out again that in Hebrews 9:22, in fact, the law requires that nearly everything be cleansed with blood. This is still just gross to me, but it doesn't make sense, right? Blood doesn't clean things; it makes it dirty. So maybe I have the wrong view of blood, but it's interesting that they're calling it out as a cleaning tool. But we see just the testimony of Christ. But he has appeared once for all at the culmination of the ages to do away with sin by the sacrifice of himself. Just as people are destined to die once and after that to face judgment, so Christ was sacrificed once to take away the sins of many. And he will appear a second time, not to bear sin, but to bring salvation to those who are waiting for him. It's awesome. It's the last couple verses of Hebrews 9. And then in 10, we're encouraged, let us consider how we may spur one another on toward love and good deeds, not giving up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing, but encouraging one another, and all the more as you see the day approaching. This is a good reminder for me to constantly be willing and looking for fellowship among believers. And it's something we get to do every week in our call. And I love that. It's been very encouraging for me. But it's hard sometimes. And so it's nice that we can encourage each other in those times to come together to continue seeking God, even when things are hard. Hebrews 11:1, one of my favorite verses. Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. I just love that. We are called to have faith and to grow our faith, and it's constantly confusing sometimes. What is that faith? And it's being confident that Christ is who he says he is, that his promise is going to come true, and being assured that he is doing what he said, that he's bringing his kingdom, even though we don't necessarily see it with our eyes. We can see the fruit of it, and so we're sure of what he's doing and have faith in it. We see by faith, this was interesting, by faith Sarah, who was past childbearing age, was enabled to bear children because she considered him faithful who had made the promise. And I thought this was funny because she laughed, right? So I didn't see belief from her in the story. I mean, clearly it happened, and the writer of Hebrews attests to that. So apparently afterwards she did believe, and that's what enabled it. But it was just like, at first, the laughter made me think that she did not believe. And then in Hebrews 12, in the first verse, it says, "Let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith." I love that. Like, he started it, like he's pioneered it. He's the one who defined and set up what faith looks like, being sure of what God called him to do. And he is perfecting faith in us so that we can believe in him and God and his promises. And then at the very end of 12, "Therefore, since we are receiving a kingdom that cannot be shaken, let us be thankful and so worship God acceptably with reverence and awe. For our God is a consuming fire." It's not a name for God, I don't think, but it's a cool title. Consuming fire. It's an interesting way to think about it. I know we often get in our heads, different God complexes, and he's so many of them. And it's hard for us to relate in a single way, but thinking of him as something that is just raging with just this consuming energy, it is awe-inspiring, and I think a good view of God. And then this was interesting in 13. It said, "Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever." And, we hear that God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But it's interesting seeing Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, because he was human. And so I would imagine, like humans, he would change a little, right? He clearly changed from a child to a man. I wonder if his opinions ever changed, if his thought processes ever changed, right? As he matured. So maybe it just means now, like in his, spiritual body, he is unchanging, and in his purpose and his plans, he's unchanging. But it was just interesting because I read that and I thought of all the ways that it's nice sometimes to change. But it is cool to know that we have someone who's made a promise, someone who has done a work, and is going to keep that promise and fulfill that work for us. All right. We kept it short. Thank you for watching. Again, links to everything are in the description if you want to find the reading plan or come hang out with us in person or virtually tonight at 7:30. Can't wait to see you. Cheers.